Ladies and gentlemen, it is currently the 9th of March in our favorite year of 2010. And this is Day 9 Daily number 85. I'm wearing headphones right now because I'm testing the audio. I'm listening to it loop back into me, which is weird because I'm hearing myself from 5 seconds ago. So, I think the audio's okay, and I also think I have like this stupid cowlick thing. Here, let me push it back, because God forbid I look anything but absolutely handsome as can be for all the gamer nerds who are watching me right now. So, this is things I've discovered in the last few weeks. As it turns out, StarCraft 2, like when you turn it on, it crawls inside your computer and rips the guts out of your mic quality, right? It demolishes your mic sound quality. So right now, I don't have StarCraft 2 open yet. And I'll be taking off the headphones in a minute, so that way you guys can hear the StarCraft sounds. But first, okay, so I'm going to open up StarCraft 2. It's opening right now. Let us see if the sound quality still remains as high as we can. And of course, while I'm doing all this testing and stuff, I have to say that this is the 85th Day 9 Daily, which is fantastic, because we are only 15 episodes away from episode 100, so I better have something really fantastic planned for that. And it's not accepting my login, so allow me to try one more time. And it's logging me in, great. And also, I'm not doing a cast tomorrow or the next day because I'm going to be at the Game Developers Conference. So allow me to unmute the audio and see if it's sounding okay. Hey, it looks like the audio quality is fantastic, so let's just rip this mic thing out. Yes, no more headphones. That way everyone can hear the sound that's going on. So here's the deal today. In the past Day 9 Dailies, I'm actually just looking at my video list right now. I've been doing like opening timings. I've been looking at a lot of games in each individual Day 9 Daily. Like we looked at a bunch of games from Oversky and his Roach plays. We looked at Calgo Moo and just talked about how awesome he was as a human being. We looked at some Immortal stuff, some Protoss vs. Protoss tests, some Protoss vs. Zerg tests. But what we haven't gotten the chance to do, ooh, that's loud, is we haven't gotten to just look at a game and gawk at it, right? To just go, oh my god, these players are so good. Because that's pretty much what the Day 9 Daily was before, when it was just StarCraft 1. I would load up an old pro match, we just look at it and talk through it. And we have done that once between Nazgul and Afi, and today we're going to be doing an epic, supposedly epic match between Smuft and Insane, who goes by the name Lorelei. So, hopefully, I've pronounced that right, and without further ado, let us jump right into the game. Alright, so my mic quality should be through the roof right now, and everyone should be very happy. So, I think a lot of people might not be aware of who these two players are. I'll begin with Insane, because he's perhaps the more known player of the two. Both these players are very highly ranked on the ladder right now. Super strong players all around. Insane, who's Lorelei right here, is a well-known American player. I actually met him when I was at a workshop, when I was like a sophomore in high school. I was at this like game programming workshop up in Seattle, so, he's a fine fellow. I believe he played either Protoss or Terran in StarCraft 1, but, he's been pretty much around for a long time. Now, Smuft is a player who was super good, went to Korea as a pro when he was very, very young. He was actually... I think this was around the 2001, 2002 days. He's a very strong Canadian player. He constantly did well in every WCG he participated in. Has had a little bit of controversy surrounding him every now and again. For instance, when he went to the WCG Grand Finals after, qualifying through WCG Canada, and he was, I believe, held at the airport and then deported or something like that. So he was never able to play in his games. A little bit of interesting stuff goes on around Smuft, but, all that aside, he is a unbelievably good player. He pretty much pioneered early expanding with Templar as Protoss, even though that seems pretty standard nowadays. He was the first one to use it constantly on GameEye. Was an absolute beast on the servers. And he's actually posted in the TeamLiquid.net forums saying that, don't ever be complaining about imbalance. Instead, just try to be figuring out ways to beat the game and not complaining about any of that, because really, it's not going to get you anywhere in the end. And I pretty much agree with that. So, wise words to live by. We are watching now Smuft, who Smuft, I think, has had like this insane record. Oh, by the way, just to make sure that this doesn't happen. Hi, I'm busy. There we go. So that way you don't get messaged in the game. Smuft, I think, is over 2,000 points on the ladder. He's like so high, and he's played so many games and has this ridiculous win percentage. He has like 270 wins and like 60 losses or something retarded. I have to double check that because I could be totally wrong. Either way, both of them are very good. So we're seeing pretty normal openings at this point in time. Terrans are just loving getting ultra fast orbital commands. It's like can't be bad, right? It pays for itself in like 15 seconds. Like once the mule comes down and returns some trips, immediately you've gotten more money than you lost by not building SCVs in the time this orbital command was making. And that's actually been very useful for me to see, because I've even tried some builds skipping the orbital command, and it turns out to just be a really, really bad idea. I mean, a lot of my build actually gets set way behind. These mules just put you so far ahead economically. And the Protoss player seems to be just doing everything, I would say normal looking, but I have not actually played around too much with this. We have some guys just hanging out by the simulator. I'm sure that's unintentional. But, oh, look at this. 2 gates early. Alright, so when I see this, I immediately think that there's going to be some sort of warp gate push going on early. That would be my assumption. Yep, we see the warp gates coming out really early on. Anytime you see 3 gateways this early in this matchup, it's almost certainly going to be some sort of warp gate rush. It doesn't necessarily have to be something super cheesy, you know, like putting it up here, but sometimes players will build a pylon here, start warping, and then as they're getting up the ramp, they build a pylon here, and then they warp right into this area. So that's a threat that our friendly neighborhood Insane must definitely be super duper aware of. And he's getting a second barracks. This looks like the normal way to be playing this matchup right now, is just to stay one base and get a second gas pretty early on, and to pretty much go 2 barracks Marine Marauder. I've seen a lot of players like getting a Ghost Academy. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Ghost Academy go down right there, helping to be a spotter for this area, and also, you know, getting us ghosts, which are very good. Ooh, 2 Tech Lab opening. That's interesting. Looks like he's going just Marauders in the opening. I haven't really seen that too much. And see here, oh, here's the Warp Gate stuff going on. Now, whenever you're watching your replays, make sure you don't become obsessed with this sort of action. You know, like a lot of Terran players will, let's say the Terran lost right now. I mean, as we can see, there's like another 45 minutes in the game. But let's say the Terran player just lost right here and it was just over. A lot of times the Terran player just sits here and just looks at the battle and is like, you know, and just sort of puts his hand in his hair and doesn't worry, or excuse me, doesn't look anywhere else on the screen. And really all the stuff you want to be worrying about is back here in the base. What I would note right now is, wow, Protoss has not actually been building any other structures, right? He's sitting with just these 3 gateways. So in this rush, I'm actually going to just stay on the Nexus. I want to see if any probes are getting made, alright? See, still no probes, just constant pushing up. Which one do you want to attack? This is the most standard thing, is to hit the supply depot that has the smallest repair I guess repair area to it. So only looks like 2 SCVs can repair that at once. This one can have a lot more SCVs repairing it. So he does get repelled, but uh-oh, look here, we have the pylon. And look, still no probes. You know, I'm actually going to keep the unit counting station up. And just note that it's 22 probes for the Protoss player. And not many SCVs being built right now. I always wonder if this is him intentionally saving up, or whether this is him just being a little bit panicked at this point in time. But it looks like the Protoss does in fact get repelled. And that's part of the reason... Oh, robotics facility. Okay, cool. That's part of the reason why I really like Warp Gate pushes early on, is because this is just a pylon right now. And this pylon that was built here had a chance to kill the opponent right away. Even though it didn't get up, not a big loss for the Protoss. Protoss just cancels the construction and continues with everything pretty much as normal. Continuing to warp things in the base. Now, an issue whenever you are doing any kind of strategy like this, where you have a lot of unit-producing structures, say a lot of barracks, in this case, a lot of gateways, a lot of people think only about this push right here, you know? They'll pretty much think to themselves, well, you know, I want to do as much damage as I possibly can, therefore, I should get 3 gateways. Oh, Jesus, what is this thing? What is happening? My hair's, like, exploding. Alright. Woo! Woo! Ugh! Ugh! I should have styled it before I cast, obviously, right? Anyways, yeah, a lot of people will see this sort of, or they'll see that their goal is to rush early with warp gates. So they'll get as many warp gates as they think they can sustain in the rush, and they'll just go for it all in. But most of the time, if your Terran opponent's competent, he's going to be able to hold it off. You need to make sure that your transition makes sense. You need to make sure that you have enough money and everything to do what you want to do. And for instance, if you went 4 gates or something like that and started to warp in to try to kill your opponent, you might have to change plans like 20 seconds later, and 2 of these warp gates might not actually be making anything for a long time. 4 warp gates might not be sustainable. So in a sense, what you've done is gotten your rush denied, which is as expected, but then you put a huge dent in your mid-game because you spent all this money on a warp gate where you didn't actually end up using it too much. So I'm liking this, that Smuft is actually getting a lot of gas units, observers, getting sentries, which are actually called sentries. They're not stalkers, which I have a tendency to misstate. And I would personally not mind expanding. I'm a very greedy player. I like expanding. Instead, Smuft, since he's making all these gas units, he's spending his money getting that robotics facility, saving up for a Colossus or a Colossi or a Colossuxin, whatever the plural of Colossus is. Coloxin. There we go. I like that one. Mini Coloxin. Oh, and we have the orbital command going. Oh, you see that? I love that, right? Right as we got above 50, we saw the orbital command spend that money. So I think that's always a great sign of a strong player. It's always these little things that you can look for, just for like benchmarks. Like in StarCraft 1, it would be, is he always missing his supply, you know? Or if a Zerg player, right when the larva pops up, he builds something out of it after like a second. You're like, wow, he's really focused. He's really on. In StarCraft 2, we see all this stuff relating a lot back to the macro mechanics. Is he spending all of his energy getting mules, getting comsats? Smuft's letting his chrono boost build up a little bit. Probably going to be saving it so that way he can get a whole bunch of Colossi very quickly. We see an Immortal coming out, and Immortals can't ever be bad. They're just very, very strong units. Especially considering this is an almost exclusively Marauder combination early on. And it looks like a somewhat fast starport going down here. I say somewhat fast because a lot of players I've seen are favoring getting the command center right after these 2 barracks. You know, you get the Marine Marauder composition out, and that can hold off most early stuff, especially if you're building a bunker, which, by the way, you can salvage, so definitely feel a little bit more free to build bunkers. But we see players expand a lot more, but a little interesting to see a 1-base type strategy going on right now. Getting a Viking right now. We also see the reactor going up. Pretty sure that starport's going to snag that reactor in just a moment to do some sort of Viking medevac combination. And the command center is, of course, almost done. Yep, there is a factory. Going off to do whatever it wants to do. Things seem pretty normal right here. Getting the Colossus. Colossus, I mean, very standard unit if you see your opponent doing any sort of Marine in any fashion, because without that plus attack upgrade, without the plus combat shield, Marines have 45 life, and a Colossus does 46 damage. So that's one-shot kill. So it's really important that you spread out those Marines against Colossoxin. I need to work on my plurals a little bit. So yeah, it's really important you spread your Marines out, or else the Colossi will just demolish you so hard. And this, I think, is a really interesting transition, right? Yeah, the expansion's getting up. That seems well and normal. But instead of adding on more gateways, we're getting more Colossi. I'm really interested to see how that's going to turn out, because the Colossi obviously are going to be super strong against any sort of Marine Marauder combination if you have other units along with them. And here are the other units. But I worry about the Vikings, right? That's the big concern of mine. Look, double Viking coming out right now for the Terran. This is a very, very, very safe play right now for Terran. Look, he even has the Ghost, so that way he can EMP anything that gets in the way. Where's the Ghost Academy? Yep, kind of neatly tucked away in his base. Could make a nuke. I really want to have a nuke made. That's my current life goal, is to just see Terran players nuke, so hopefully we get to see something fancy in this game. So I think that the 2 robotics facility is a really interesting choice in this matchup, because when you first look at it, you think, well, can you really support 2 robotics facilities worth of Colossi all the time? Well, the Observer is the one unit that makes me like this a lot, because you do want a lot of Observers to be spotting around here. I mean, this one Observer is already getting a little tired, right? He has to scout all the way back and forth here if he wants to be constantly spotting anything. Let me remove this unit counting station for now. Yeah, and you want to be able to have a nice little spread out here, maybe get an Observer here, maybe toss one over here. In Protoss vs. Terran in StarCraft 1, you always got tons of Observers in this matchup because it was so key to be able to contain your Protoss opponent in every way you could. And one thing I'm unsure about with sensor towers is whether or not they see Observers. That's one thing I'm really curious about. That would be very interesting. That's something that I'd want to research. Again, I mean, with everyone being so new to StarCraft 2, little things like, what do Observers do? in relation to sensor towers. A lot of people don't know that. For instance, I didn't even know that you could salvage bunkers until like 2 days ago. So, yeah, I'm always trying to keep my eye open and be aware of this sort of stuff. So, I actually haven't seen that many gateway units get made for quite some time. And this... See, I don't know if this is necessarily good or bad. So, here's my thoughts on this. So, we have 3 gateways that haven't really done anything for a while. Is that good or bad? Well, for the rush purposes, 3-gate, warp gate push, it seems awesome, Getting a pylon right outside his front, and then maybe getting a pylon at his ramp and pushing up there. The question is, assuming you're against a really good opponent, how often will you actually be able to get away with that? And the answer should be close to 0%, right? Against someone who's competent and aware of the warp gate rush, it shouldn't ever really win the game immediately. So the question is, with 3 warp gates, what pressure does it put on the opponent, or what does it force the opponent to do? It could be that we're forcing our opponent not to expand very early. It could be we're punishing our opponent for teching. This 3 warp gate might be really difficult to hold off if we were getting tanks very quickly, something like that. You always need to make sure that you're aware of the possibilities you're cutting out or what you're specifically trying to win against. So that way you know what lives against it. So we know in this situation we are definitely 100% up against some sort of Marine Marauder combination early, mostly Marauders. And is that okay to have had these 3 warp gates around doing nothing for all this time? We're at the 12-minute mark right now. I'm actually going to rewind back here right to when the warp gate push was, getting ready to go. And I'm actually going to speed this up. And let's just look at these icons right here, right? We just saw some sentries pop in here. I'm actually going to keep it just kind of bouncing back and forth between these two, right? Let's look in the bottom right corner here to see when is stuff being made. It doesn't look like these gateways are really being used. So I'm wondering, okay, so they're being used a little bit. All right, we've had 1 production in the last minute or so. So I'm still checking through here. So I'm wondering, maybe we should cut back on warp gates and just try to put pressure on the opponent. Maybe what we can do as Protoss is wall our front in, make the Terran aware that I could be going 3-gate, but maybe I haven't seen it yet. There's some more Zealots popping out. There's only a second set of Zealots that I'm checking here. And notice that only these 2 warp gates have really been used. There was 2 sentries made, and then 2 Zealots just made. Only once have we actually made use of all 3 of these warp gates, and they're being idle for quite some time. So I feel like perhaps, assuming that our opponent will be able to hold off some sort of warp gate antics that we do, and instead just going for a 2-gate, thereby giving us a faster robotics facility, a faster Colossus, a faster expansion, all these sorts of things, I like a lot. Still haven't seen much done out of these warp gates, yeah. I'm not going to go ahead and advance forward because I think the point has been made. Uh-oh, my computer's lagging. Alright, fantastic. And we're back. By the way, on Metalopolis in particular, I love this placement for a sensor tower. I just think this is great. It just spots such a huge area by your expansion, and considering you're planning on generally expanding down here, sometimes here for a planetary fortress, having this lane well covered by that sensor tower, I think is great. And Protoss continuing to think about expanding. Pretty much just robotics facility units getting made right now. Oh my god, and the thermal lance upgrade is so good. Bumps the range of the Colossus from 6 to 9. We can actually see it in real time. This is like the sickest thing ever, to get 9 range. Virtually all the other range upgrades is just a little tiny boost, but that is so huge. And that just rips up the Marines. But right now, we're pretty much seeing mainly Marauders. We don't even have that many Marines. We have more Marines than Marauders, but normally you have like twice as many Marines than Marauders. We have all these Vikings, only 1 Ghost. Kind of would like to see a second Ghost coming out now. Oh, and speak of the devil, it's a second Ghost. And we have 2 engineering bays here, just getting super sick upgrades. Oh yeah, look, Insane's already 1-0. Being really proactive about that. So I'm curious when the timing push is going to come. Perhaps we're going to see 2 medevacs come out. Perhaps he's going to be wanting to expand. Protoss, I don't actually mind the fact that he hasn't really tried to push forward, that there doesn't really seem to be a big timing attack going on, because he's focusing all his energy instead on expanding. Which is, is very typical of StarCraft 1 Protoss vs. Terran. And another command center being made. Uh-oh, looks like he's going for a planetary fortress. Getting these super saturated Gold minerals. And checking out up here. I don't know if this is for an expansion or whether it's just to sort of check out what's going on. Still want to come back here. Ooh, more gateways being built. I'm real curious to see what transition is going to be made out of this. Because right now we've seen a lot of unit-producing structures get made, but not a lot of units get made. And, oh, Zealot leg speed. Looks like we're going to see some sort of Colossus-Zealot combination, which is really awesome. Especially when you have the speed and the range upgrade. So continuing to make Marauders, adding on a few more Ghosts. Not many Marines, though. You know, considering how often you see Terran players get, you know, 2 or sometimes even 3 barracks with reactors to get the mass Marine, it's a huge deal to get the combat shield upgrade for the plus 10 hit points, or else these Colossi are just going to demolish it so easily. But in this case, since there's slightly fewer Marines, it's slightly less bad. I still think, it's something that you'd want to change. I mean, Insane even said himself, whoops, kind of forgot about that till the mid game, so no big deal. That sort of stuff happens. And here we are. We now have pylons getting made. For some reason, my computer decided to start being super ultra smooth all of a sudden, so that is fantastic. Forging here. I think this is one of the best use for the Chrono Boost. And if we look around here, we have this Nexus getting a little high on Chrono Boost. I think that that's going to be the one thing that really revolutionizes Protoss play, is Protoss players who get really good at using Chrono Boost a lot. And knowing when and how to use it. Because for the most part, I mean, I pretty much say to myself, well, early game I'm going to Chrono Boost my Nexuses because I want to have a lot of probes. Or if I'm rushing, clearly I want to Chrono Boost the gateways so I can get a better rush. But I don't know about the mid game or the late game. I mean, theoretically, yeah, there's some situations where I really want my Colossi out and that sort of thing, but I'm not so sure. One thing that Noni did suggest that I thought was brilliant is hotkey every single unit producing structure and upgrading structure to 0, right? Get your Nexus, all your gateways, your Forge, both your robotics facilities, and all your other Nexuses, all into one control group. That way, you can hit 0, selecting everything. So let me actually show you what I mean. So, we'll have everything selected like this. And then you can hit C and Chrono Boost just the portrait of everything. So that way you can be in some intense battle down here, hit 0, and then Chrono Boost these gateways. Then select all the gateways and keep macroing. I think that's a fantastic idea by Noni. Giving him credit. So this is something I'm a little concerned about, is just how many Vikings there are here. Dark Templar does a ton of damage. Look at the sick range on these Colossi. Just burning up these infantry. The infantry, look, it's not even close. Jesus. I mean, the Colossi die really fast, but, I mean, the damage was done. Really, the Colossi just need 2 or 3, sometimes 4 or 5 hits there just to do all the serious damage. And this is why I'm really starting to like Blink, is specifically to track down air units. Especially these longer range air units that, like to just skirt around the edge and stop and stuff and try to shoot from far away, just blinking right underneath them. I've had a lot of success with players who like going Banshees. Because I'll just get a bunch of sentries, stalkers with Blink, and I'll just bounce around everywhere. So, look, all this Chrono Boost here. What primarily is he making? I'm just sort of poking around here. Oh, he's actually Chrono Boosting here. This is so smart. I love this. I mean, a lot of people would get the Warp Prism, but I think that's a pretty easy target. I don't see any problem with building pylons here. Well, actually, maybe I disagree with that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I necessarily like Warp Prisms over pylons for warp gating. Either way, I think it's a cute idea, the idea of with a big attack, have one of the two, either a pylon or a warp gate. Pylon or a warp prism nearby, so you can use your warp gates to get in there. And obviously do a lot of this sort of stuff with Dark Templar, because you know what? Even if it doesn't work, even if it dies like this, you did waste a scan, which is approximately 300 minerals from a mule. So we have a nice little Zealot army being stockpiled, a lot of Immortals, and this I think is just beautiful, right? I love this. Think about how smart this is, right? We open up Colossi, so that way we know our Colossi are going to do a ton of damage against any sort of Marine composition that our opponent does. But I think most importantly, it skews our opponent to getting way too many Vikings. So what are we seeing right here? Vikings are armored, we're seeing Marauders are armored. If we just get Zealots and Immortals, we just completely negate the fact that there are all these Vikings right here. I think that's a beautiful transition. Opening up, getting Colossi, but if you see too many Vikings, just start making massive amounts of Immortals, because look at the damage. It pretty much gets an extra 5 damage boost against armored units, right? 2 extra damage for just its regular shot, and 3 extra damage for its bonus shot. So I'm absolutely loving this transition. I think that's brilliant. Oops, we're on fast. We need our adrenaline. Cranking it up to faster. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to briefly touch on this while there's this brief slowish period. A lot of people will watch some of my casts, and I've heard this before. People are like, oh my god, Day9's drunk in this. Day9's high in this. Hate to be a disappointment, but I really never drink, and I've never done any drugs in my life. I'm just like this. Yeah, well, I suppose I'd say caffeine is my drug of choice. In all formats. Green tea, energy drink, coffee. Oh, I just love the caffeine. But really, yeah, I'm just pretty... Day9 likes this. This is pretty much what Day9 is into. It's just chatting about StarCraft. I'm really digging these sorts of transitions, this Planetary Fortress push right up to here, for 2 reasons. When compared to this expansion, let's pretend that we're Terran and we're thinking about expanding here first. Let me actually just move the main screen to some, unimportant place. That way we can really focus on the mini-map. If I'm down here, I have to worry about attacks coming from this top lane into the main, and from this left lane down here to this place. In fact, I have to cover this huge, wide area, right? If I'm taking this bottom area. But if I take this one, notice that when I was originally just stuck back to my main and my natural, if I just extend to the center, I get a lot more coverage on both of the lanes, meaning that this bottom right expansion is going to be a lot safer, right? So that's the first reason why I like it, is by taking this, we have a lot easier time covering the ground in the middle, so we can take this back expansion really easy, we can take this back expansion really easy. And also the second reason is just that if you put a Planetary Fortress there, you're getting gold mineral patches, so that's obviously really good, and it's very easily defendable. You have high ground, which is not as good as it was in StarCraft 1, but it's still noteworthy. But see, God, I love this Immortal transition so much. I mean, for me, so much of my thought process was locked into, I am making I'm making Colossi, I must make more anti-air. So it's pretty much going Colossi, mass Stalker. So just briefly think about that mental mistake that I've been making, which was, I'm relying heavily on the Colossus, or Coloxin as I've been trying to say. I've been relying on the Colossus to rip through that Medic Marine group, or the Marine Marauder Medevac group. And since I need the Colossi to stay alive, because he's getting all these Vikings, what I really need is anti-air. So I've been getting like Templar, I've been getting Stalkers, I've been having limited success with that. But this is so brilliant to think, well, do I really need the Colossi in the first place? Well, no. Look at him just sidestepping this entire issue and making Immortals instead. Always, whenever you're thinking of some sort of... some assumption you're making that might not necessarily be true, just to stop and look back at everything that you're assuming, even little stuff. So, for instance, constant supply depot, constant unit production. That's something that for a long time people were just like, well, this build's bad because you have to stop making stuff. Until we heard the player Best, who has like some of the best macro on the planet, he says it's really good to cut units to add on more gateways. That really causes your macro to surge forward. Sure, you're vulnerable for a small period of time, but you don't need to have constant unit production out of all gateways all game long. In fact, you should stop at key periods and spend that money adding on new gateways. I just think that's brilliant, the way that Best questioned that sort of fundamental assumption. And a lot of that's going to happen in StarCraft 2, where, you're trying to apply your logic from the previous game to the new game. So, for instance, when I first played, I never even considered going Marine Marauder against Protoss, because I just thought, well, yeah, you mech against Protoss. And as we're seeing, it's a little bit more common to do this sort of stuff and get the Vikings to deal with Colossi. But, look at this. Adding on another tech lab. What sort of transition is going to come out of this? Sure, we can get more medevacs out of this, but I'm loving the fact that it seems so much like this Terran is still thinking about Colossi in his eyes. And expanding here. Pretty nice and normal here. Having a pylon here, so that way we can potentially just have all our warp gates. Just send a whole bunch of stuff here. Yeah, look at this. That's pretty cute. Sending DTs there. Oh, that's brilliant, right? If we're having trouble sneaking Dark Templar past enemy lines, we just build a pylon back here, and then we just slowly warp in DTs. Pretty cool stuff. Terran looks like he's gearing up to just be passive all game long. He's already 2-2. 3-2's almost done. Still adding on a ton of stuff. Has plenty of time, I think, to add on a bunch of reactors here and to even expand down here. Loving the sensor tower placement. I mean, I don't know how well you can see this, but I'll actually just scroll with the map. Just huge coverage with these sensor towers. Everything's completely clear. Big army coming up, has to pull back, but look how many Immortals are in there. I'm really into this unit composition, and only just recently adding on those Colossi. Because there was a point where it was like 4, 5, 6 Vikings and a really small Medic Marine army, which means that the Colossi would have been falling really fast had he gotten them. So I really like the choice of Immortals, not just for a big transition, but also for this on-the-fly sort of crisis management of, oh god, I really need to make sure that I have enough stuff to hold off his push. Getting yet another robotics facility. This is awesome. I'm loving to see this sort of distribution of buildings. Because so often players will just, get a whole bunch of gateways and be done with it. I know I do. So here we go, sort of repositioning for an attack. Getting a lot more Stalkers now. I think that these Colossi are being added on. And so many Immortals. I'm actually going to briefly slow this down. Are there any ghosts here? I don't really see any ghosts anywhere. I think that's a bit of a blunder. Was that one? No, that's just the Planetary Fortress being awesome. Looks like safely repelling this, but not without taking a serious hit. Look at this. Still way ahead in food. 143 food to 121 food. But I think that this is an easy situation to get yourself into that you don't want to be in, which is I'm pretty much just macroing a big Marine Marauder army, and then you forget to go back and get ghosts or this cute sort of tech units. This actually is a common issue that Protoss players had in Zerg vs. Protoss in the original StarCraft, where they would get a whole bunch of Templar at first, move out, and then they would replenish Dragoons and Zealots and forget to make new Templar. Or in particular, in Zerg vs. Terran, Zergs always forget to constantly be adding on more Defilers because those things fall fast. So here we're seeing the Ghosts lag a little bit behind, and Ghosts really are just such a staple of success in this matchup. You need to get the Ghosts start to finish all game long. Absolutely critical in my eyes. Slowly pushing up here, still forgetting the upgrade for the armor, but way ahead in the upgrade. Look at this, 3-3 against 2-1, and look at the Marines just tear those Immortals down. Blinking about, but to no avail. And this sort of turtle style, I think, is working out pretty good, I mean, what we can do is, I think we can actually siege a tank here to hit this stuff. I'm not entirely sure about that, but at the very least, we can move a tank here to hit this stuff. So we're pretty much shutting down this center expansion as Terran. And we can just turtle, and we can expand here, we can expand here. Yeah, oh look, he's already doing that. Great, and we can just focus on turtling. There's been a lot of cool turtle styles that have been coming about with Terran. In this matchup, we're seeing a lot of this sort of Planetary Fortress and Marine Marauder just hold position armies. Still really curious to see some ghosts pop out. In Terran vs. Zerg, we've seen a lot of players just go mass Thor Banshee. Or excuse me, mass Thor Hellion, just to control big areas against air. There's actually a great game of Frozen Arbiter, aka Jinro, doing that. It was really, really cool to see. It was a really sick game. But a question that I think is going to be big right now is, how do you break a turtling player in StarCraft 2? So let's just take a turtling Terran in just this matchup. So in StarCraft 1, we're familiar with the ideas of recalling into his base, just getting a whole bunch of Zealots to bust in and that sort of thing. But with StarCraft 2, without as much research into it, how do we go about doing that? Well, I think a few ideas that I'm thinking of right now, that I would write, of course, in my StarCraft notebook, would be like getting Warp Prisms to bounce around to these back bases. As we're seeing right here, we see the Dark Templars are doing a ton of damage just denying these expansions. And if we just put a Warp Prism here and started warping stuff in, we could do a ton of damage to these back bases and be really, really aggressive. I think that the Protoss should sort of explode forward, get a whole bunch of expos, and start trying to do a lot of that action. These big armies, I mean, I think it's going to be, that's the hardest way to go about doing it, just because it's hardest to know what the best composition is at this stage of StarCraft 2. I think just focusing a little bit on tactics and then slowly working back on the what's the best composition question, I think that might bring a little bit more success. And look at like mass Colossi being made. Hey, look, it's a Warp Prism. Clairvoyance. Hooah! I haven't seen this game, by the way. But I have had caffeine, so hoorah! I mean, these Vikings just kill Colossi so fast. Looks like he's also getting the air attack upgrade, which I think is a good decision. I don't mind not getting air defense just because the range is so huge on those Vikings. But I feel like at this point, I feel like that the Terran is going to rip through this army, with the exception of this Colossi just murdering all these Marines. Look at that. Yeah, that's like not even close. But I feel like the Protoss should just push right now. The Protoss should do some sort of attack forward. It doesn't really seem like the Terran should do an attack forward, because it doesn't really look like the Protoss has that much stuff. But Terran looks like he's just sticking to his original plan, which was to just sit and turtle really, really hard, and pretty much split the map, but deny Protoss ever the chance to get this expansion. So we see a Warp Prism going up here. Yeah, I'm really liking this sort of stuff. I would definitely be morphing some Dark Templars into that mix instead of some Zealots, just because there's so many barracks here. There goes the Warp Prism. And also probably just warping here and trying to kill this stuff off. We haven't seen a Mothership yet, which I really think is a good choice. The Mothership can do a lot of cool stuff with recalls, and especially like these Colossi, I think are going to just do tons of damage if you can actually get them into your opponent's base. I mean, right now the issue is that these Colossi, and pretty much any major attack, needs to attack uphill on this planetary fortress. Might be a better choice to sort of actually just try to waltz down here, but I think that the Terran's going to try to actually intercept that. So it looks like Terran's doing his first move forward. Plenty of medevacs. I actually want to see... Oh, there's a lot of medevacs there. Ooh. Dude, these Hunter-Seeker missiles. Oh, man. I actually want to rewind just to reveal quite how much damage this does. It's pretty absurd. I actually rewound a little bit too much because my mouse is not as sensitive as it should be. Some nice cool little battling going on. I'm really digging Smuft's transitions, and I really like Insane's just overall game plan of, hey, I am going to just expand and turtle really hard and get my half of the map locked down. So here comes the push now. The Hunter-Seeker missiles, if any of you didn't know, do exactly what they say. They hunt and seek. You just click on a unit, and it's like a targeted irradiate. So it does an area effect damage, and it's instant, so there's no waiting for the opponent's Defiler to slowly die or something like that. You can just Hunter-Seeker it away. And this, I think, is cool. I love any ability that's a projectile. So, for instance, EMPs in StarCraft 1, I loved. Here, or like Lockdown, when the Ghost shoots that. I love the fact that these Hunter-Seeker missiles are projectiles, because it means that you can spread things out, you can run away. I mean, they take a long time to go off, but look, without spreading, serious damage. Look at that, everything just plummeted into some hue of orange or yellow. And we're seeing the storms come about now. I think that's going to help, clearly, I think, as we can see. And now I think we're starting to see the most common composition for the Protoss in the late game that I have seen, which is mostly Colossi, Stalker, High Templar. That really is what I've seen as the norm. Looks like Smuft is being a little different, though, and just getting a ton of Immortals. I actually question whether he should have just been continuing to get Immortals all game long, because, I mean, the Colossi are falling so fast to all those Vikings, and, I mean, there's so many Marauders here that are armored. Some nice little battling going on here, but it looks like Insane's going to be able to take this game down. So we see the Immortal just sort of, doing whatever he wants. No big deal. Immortals live a mind of their own. So, killing off the Nexus, that's great. Part of me feels like this could have been done a little bit earlier, because this isn't like the biggest Marine Marauder force, but it's still doing a ton of damage. Either way, I'm not actually too concerned that he could have done this a little bit earlier, because again, as long as he's locking down this backside, I think he's going to be in really good shape. So one thing awesome about the warp gates, we can warp all the way up here to defend. And that's something that a lot of people had to do in StarCraft 1, which was to build extra gateways at their other expansions. So that way, if the Protoss lost a push here, the Terran started to move up, more units would be coming from the front instead of all the units coming from the back, which would give the Terran the opportunity to just set right up on top. But here come the Immortals, just cleaning everything up. Look how fast this Marauder is going to fall. The Flam! Taking them down. These poor little medevacs go home to tell the horrifying tale of attacking at the North Base. But at least they killed this expansion. Part of me feels like instead of killing this one, maybe even coming around here... no, maybe I just disagree with what I just said. Yeah, I suppose killing this off is the best choice. I always want to make sure I'm questioning that. all these little decisions I make, you know, because you kill the natural, well, sure, yeah, I'm going to, whoopsie daisies, I'm going to rewind on accident. You think, yeah, sure, I'm going to kill this natural, may as well go kill the main, but sometimes you can just kill the natural and just hang out and sit. I mean, a great example of that is Quanro against Flash on Roadrunner. Flash pretty much just didn't let Quanro get the natural expansions of the bases, and that was his whole goal. He even let Quanro get like 5 or 6 gas. 6 bases worth of resources. And Flash was like, that's totally fine. I'm just going to sit here and turtle with tanks and vultures, and you won't be able to break me at any point. I just need to make sure you don't get that 7th or 8th base. So I think that's a really interesting thing to consider, is just to, you know, do I really need to be killing this? Because maybe those Marine Marauder would have been put to better use if they'd pulled back, regrouped, that sort of thing. And we're seeing some nice little Warp Prism usage right here, continuing to try to peel this Terran apart. Getting these high Templar. Now this is a point in time where I really feel like the extra upgrade, getting that extra energy, is going to be super useful. Actually, there's the Templar Archives. Looks like he has researched everything from there. A lot of people are questioning these sorts of upgrades. So for instance, the Ghost thing, if you research this, it increases the starting energy of Ghost by 25. A lot of people are saying, well, why isn't it just boosting the maximum? You know, what's the whole point of that? And I can see situations in this game, in StarCraft 2, where I'd probably prefer just to have an upped max to my mana. But here, with the Templar, I definitely want to have just more starting mana, because if I warp in to attack, I can immediately storm all these guys. I think that's super critical, right? I think that is an awesome, awesome thing to do. Anytime you're planning on doing any sort of warp gate stuff, like mass warp gate, I think that definitely getting any sort of extra energy boost is going to be like super critical. And look at this complete anti-ground army. There's absolutely nothing here that can do anything to Vikings. And part of me feels like that's okay, you know? Because again, do we really need to keep that Colossus alive? Uh-oh, here are those little bleepings. There's the Hunter-Seeker missile. I'm going to hold Alt. Hunter-Seeker missile seems to be just doing its own thing. Here it is. You can actually see it. It's floating right behind this Colossus. Is it going to go off? Is it going to go off? There it went off. Oh, seem to be glitching a little bit here. But again, yeah, I mean, all these Vikings are doing so much damage to the Colossus, but Smuft might just be thinking, I really just need that Colossus to shoot once or twice. And for the most part, just as long as my Immortals, Zealots, and Templar are able to stay alive and get in there, I'm happy. And so, my voice is starting to rasp up once again because I believe I have strep or something else that's giving me this violent sore throat. But of course, you know, being horribly diseased isn't going to stop me from, you know, talking and doing the Day 9 daily. Oh, big push coming in here by Insane. I'm going to slow it down because, you know, I don't really know the dynamics of these battles too much. I don't really know how they're supposed to work. This game so far has been totally kick-ass, right? The game plan by Insane that we predicted earlier on, you know, Insane just locking down his side of the map and preventing Protoss from taking this expansion, it's, you know, coming to full light right here. We're seeing the Protoss is really in a tough spot to defend this sort of big attack by the Terran. He needs to get some good storms off here and do something about these Ravens. I'm curious to see how he's going to go about doing that. Looks like we're seeing some Hunter-Seeker missiles go off. Some storms going off right now. And one thing that I think is really killing Insane right now is the fact that he still doesn't have that combat upgrade. Which is, you know, it's one of those things that you forget once in a game like this, and then you never forget it again because you just spend the rest of your life kicking yourself. Reminds me of when Toss Girl played this epic Terran vs. Zerg where she forgot to get the range upgrade for her Marines. So her Marines just kept losing to pure Hydralisks. Oh man, yeah, make sure you get all those upgrades. Those are important. And look at this great focus by Smuft. In the midst of losing, or almost losing this expansion to this huge push, he's doing a Warp Prism push. This is so good. This is really hard to maintain that level of focus for that long. And here we get to see the Planetary Fortress continue to just be totally awesome. I just think these Immortals are just doing so much good in this game. It's kind of interesting. I mean, the Colossi really seemed like what you did against Marine compositions, but we're starting to see more often, you know, those Vikings can shut it down so quickly, so, you know, Smuft is just avoiding the Colossi altogether, and it's working out great. Now we're seeing another little push here, continuing to reinforce. Oh, looks like he's sort of abandoned that plan. He's pulling it back now. I'm a little concerned about the amount of money that Insane's been having at a few points in time here. In particular, I'm curious why we aren't having reactors and extra tech labs being added on here. I mean, we only have 2 barracks with the tech lab add-on, which is fine, but I don't quite get the purpose of having these extra barracks without the add-ons at this stage in the game. Earlier on, I'm more than happy to defend the idea of, yeah, you don't necessarily need the add-on, but late game, you know, get the add-ons, man. Spam that A button. And right now, this is, I would say, a significant issue for the Terran right now. The fact that Protoss has been able to get this expansion up, I think that is the whole point of what Insane was trying to do. So I would focus a lot on trying to set a tank up here, or if it can actually hit minerals from there, set one up right there. I think that would be ultra, ultra good at this stage. That's actually something I want to measure. So I'll write it in my StarCraft notebook. Battlecruisers. Oh, yes. Oh, my God. You know, this is a unit I still have not made. I have never made a battlecruiser. Let's see. The Yamato cannon does 300 damage right on target. That's awesome. This is sort of weird. I mean, it does 13 damage, which doesn't actually sound like a lot, but they shoot, like, so fast. I can't believe it. And I believe that originally started out as 10 damage, but we're going to see just how fast that is in a moment here. And adding on more medevacs. This is an interesting transition, because we were upgrading those Vikings so much to deal with those Colossi, that now it's just really easy just to throw down a battlecruiser. I wouldn't actually have even minded to have this armory, wherever it is, having researched this ship plating a lot earlier on. Oh, Void Rays. Oh, that's creative. Still can't kill as fast as they can repair, but of course it's slowly doing more damage over time. Building right underneath it. Where is the Stargates? Yeah, here they are, just straight up getting Void Rays. Looks like, ooh, we're seeing a carrier transition here. Or maybe even getting a mothership, which, although they nerfed, is still probably the coolest unit that's ever been made in any StarCraft game ever. Or any strategy game, for that matter. Whoever invented that is awesome. God, the Void Rays are almost taking it down. Uh-oh. I always wondered if the Void Ray damage was capped, or whether it could just continue to soar up to infinity. And you know, think about what's so cool about the Void Ray as a unit. I think the Void Ray is best at these huge, like, you really better focus on this level distraction. You know, it's kind of like a Medic Marine drop in StarCraft 1, where really the Zerg player would need to devote a ton of resources just to making sure it doesn't do too much damage in your base. Same thing with a Void Ray. Actually, there's a hilarious game between Jessica Jung and Idra, where, I'm not going to lie, Idra is playing way better than Jessica Jung, right? Like, so much better, is way ahead in food, in tech, has expanded faster. Jessica Jung literally only has Speed Zealots. And 3 Void Rays, right? So when Idra moves his huge army out, okay, so get this, Idra moves his big army out, and then a whole bunch of Zealots go in and kill Idra's natural, 3 Void Rays go in and kill Idra's Nexus in his main, so suddenly Idra's just revealed. And Idra, like, loses shortly thereafter. You know, the Void Rays are a huge, like, distraction, screw up the opponent by killing off key buildings type of unit. And why did I spend such a big deal talking about this? Because anytime there's that big of a threat, that big of a distraction, just attacking at a different location is going to be really strong. This is true for any strategy game, right? This really was pretty necessary. Perhaps not to bring this many units, but to bring a significant chunk of units over to eliminate these Void Rays and this Warp Prism bringing stuff in, because this planetary fortress could have fell very easily. Meanwhile, Smuft just waltzes his whole army up there. Such a great distraction. That's actually something that I'm thinking right now I want to incorporate into my late game. Just getting Void Rays as a way to peel apart a turtling Terran player. You heard me say earlier, yeah, we could get motherships to recall, bring in Colossi. There was some Warp Prism stuff I mentioned earlier, and in fact, Smuft did take advantage of that. But Void Rays never occurred to me, so that's totally awesome. I love learning new stuff like that. And look, all these Immortals, just so many Immortals, and of course Immortals, with their bonus damage to armor, just rip through buildings. I mean, these supply depots are going to fall super fast. And of course, Colossi just gets to walk right uphill and do whatever he wants. And this, you know, I'm even liking more and more. Oh, by the way, look at how fast these guys are attacking. How do you rotate? Yeah, there we go. I can actually rotate the screen. I mean, look at this. Look at how fast this one guy's shooting. This is like stimmed Marine fast. So you definitely need to start getting anti-air as the Protoss player. And look, the Protoss is pretty aware of this, right? Just rushing up to kill off these starports. Oh, God, he didn't get it off in time. Ooh, my God, things burn down fast. Where's an SCV? Oh, my God. I think the Battlecruiser is going to get out in time. There we go, no problem. But I'm really liking this transition to Battlecruisers so much, I feel like Insane should have even done this earlier on. Because we're getting all these upgrades for our Vikings, so that way we'll be really good against Colossi, which, coincidentally, I happen to click on right here. And as we've seen, Smuft was smart enough to just not build that many Colossi, right? He didn't try to just bash down the defenses by throwing more units at them. You know, he cleverly just transitioned right into a lot of Immortals for much of the game. So Terran feels like he's in an uncomfortable position because he's made all these Vikings and he's not really getting to use them. But that's why I love that transition to Battlecruisers, because we can upgrade our Vikings to hold off these Colossi and then just suddenly get Battlecruisers that have a ton of upgrades on them. And think about what I was saying earlier, the fact that by not getting that many Colossi, by instead relying pretty much on just ground units like Zealots and Templar and Immortals, the Protoss really wasn't making that much anti-air, right? He was sidestepping Vikings altogether. Instead of getting the Stalkers to kill the Vikings to keep his Colossus alive, he was just not getting anti-air and not making Colossi. And now, he really does force his opponent to get a specific unit composition, right? He's forcing his opponent to get some sort of anti-air, almost certainly Stalkers, because I can't really imagine Phoenixes being very good against Battlecruisers. So that's really cool, the fact that we're able to force that sort of thing to happen to our opponent. And the planetary fortress is still repairing. Oh, the Void Ray is doing so much damage. Hang in there, planetary fortress. Oh my God, that was so close. That's so awesome. And the Battlecruisers come right in. Another reason why I like these Battlecruisers is because, again, if we take this center expansion early and then get Battlecruisers pretty soon, it's very easy for the Battlecruisers to bounce back and forth between this amount of space ground-wise. Right? It's a pretty small area, and we can always float back to our main to defend it that way. You know, if we're here and there's some sort of drop in our main, we just waltz right back here and we can defend it pretty easily. Battlecruisers seem to have snuck out somehow, but we don't really have any more starports. There they are. There's my little starport buddies. Still bothers me that Smuft was able to pull this thing off. And at this point in the game, I have no clue what either player's supposed to do. For Terran, I'd probably just still stick with my game plan and try to focus on killing this off, because really, Protoss got this expansion a lot earlier. We're seeing that these minerals don't have much in them. This is pretty much the only big mineral patch for the Protoss player. But Terran still has all this, Terran still has all this, Terran still has a good bit of stuff here. Ooh, the Void Rays are going to fall real fast. Ugh. Perhaps Void Rays against Battlecruisers, but I'm not entirely sure. We do see a fleet beacon coming out, researching flux veins, which I don't actually know what that does. I have no idea what flux veins does, because like I said, with all this cool stuff happening in StarCraft 2, it's very easy to just not realize that some stuff even exists. Yeah, look at this transition. Look at these Battlecruisers just punishing the Protoss. Oh, look at that. Oh, yes, Battlecruisers. Look how fast they attack, too. I'm just going to select this thing. Yeah, that's going to fall real fast. I mean, we have some Stalkers getting made, but, I mean, I don't, you know, it's just not really going to happen. That Storm's going to help a lot, though. Ooh. And these Void Rays, I think, might be okay against the Battlecruisers, but probably not nearly as good as just having a lot of other stuff, like Stalkers and Templar and the like. Oh, losing some Templar. So it looks like Terran actually gets to succeed in his plan of killing off this Nexus. Yet another reason why I like getting these Battlecruisers early on. Because if we take this as our third, and then around the time we're getting our fourth, we get some Battlecruisers, it means that we can defend this, go up here, kill this off, and then come right back again to defend. Very easy to defend that small of an area with a slow flying unit. So that's cool, man. I'm considering Marine Marauder with Vikings, and then transitioning straight into Battlecruisers. That seems like a pretty damn cool transition, start to finish. Seems tough for Protoss to be able to deal with, and I don't really know what the best air options are for Protoss. I mean, the Void Ray, I mean, this is actually pretty serious. The fact that this upgrade with the even though it just gives one additional starting damage to the Void Ray, because Void Rays do more and more damage over time, that just adds up so fast. And, you know, look at this. Look at this. Again, a sign of a good player. Look. Has been spending his Chrono Boost. Look at this. Yeah, this one's maxed out, as is this one, and this one. I think that again, is something that players are going to need to work on a lot, is at some point, when you have 5 Nexuses, you can pretty much just Chrono Boost your gateways nonstop. And I think people need to be a little bit more judicious with that. And of course, going back here, we see the orbital commands have just racked up tons and tons of energy. I would really like to be spending that a little bit. At the very least, scanning around and about. Oh, unknown number, getting rejected, hanging up on Skype. And, you know, Protoss is going to try to remine here, but as we're seeing, this game has been long and epic. And I love Insane's game plan. Really, it's just been to deny this, and it kind of sucks that he pretty much let Protoss mine most of this away. But we're seeing how the longer the game goes on, the more crucial this expansion is. And if we can just, look at this, float right up here, kill this off, run back. Hell, if you had Yamato cannon, you could just Yamato the Nexus and then just back off again. And my goodness, Battlecruisers kill probes quickly. Still trying to do some creative stuff here, just getting some Templar in there. We have some Void Rays being made. I don't know if Void Rays, again, are the best decision, but you know, I think that they're going to do adequate as long as you have another really nice army here. So, well, that's a lot of Void Rays there. So I actually want to slow this down. See, who are they attacking? It looks like we have a lot hitting this one up in the front. I'll actually hold down this Alt button, be like a Warcraft 3 player, and just look at everything's health at once. And, I mean, it's doing okay. It's just hard to tell. I mean, what I would probably do is, this is the thing that I would actually want to test. I was actually doing a lot of tests with my brother last night, the infamous Tasteless, the Storm Observer. Where basically, you know, we would play a game to about this point, and let's say, you know, I were Protoss in this spot, I'd be like, alright, Nick, good game, now back off, I want to test some stuff. And he'd be like, alright, cool. And then what he would do is he would just float back here, and I'd be like, alright, send all your Battlecruisers at 12 of my Stalkers, and let's see how it does. And then we'd see that, and it's like, alright, now send them against 12 of my Void Rays, and we'd see how that does. And, by the way, we just saw GG, Smuft ends up resigning from that game. But yeah, I think testing in that spot is like really useful because I'm seeing these Battlecruisers, and it feels like once the Terran got those Battlecruisers up, Protoss was really kind of scrambling. Terran seemed like he was on the defensive for a long time, and Protoss was really getting in his face, but the Battlecruisers really let Terran sort of do the big pushback. So I'm a big fan of getting those a lot earlier. I'm going to unlock here for just a little bit, take a question or two again. I must rest my poor tired strep throat. And, of course, I want to eat some pizza. Yeah, just make sure you're doing a lot of tests, because, you know, this was a pretty cool game that we saw right here. But little things, it's like you don't really know until you try it out. So, for instance, on paper, it seems like Wraiths would be really good against Mutalisks, right? I mean, they do a ton of damage, they fire really quickly. But in reality, Mutalisks just crush Wraiths, right? That was pretty counterintuitive to me when I first discovered that. But I remember it was way back when Nick and I still played games on a TCP/IP network, right? Just like two computers linked to each other at home, and I was just like, I'm going mass Wraith, and he's like, I'm going mass Mutalisk, and he won by a huge margin, and I learned something weird that day. So yeah, let's go ahead and mute the chats. That way we can get some of those friendly neighborhood questions from everybody. And what are some good questions here? I mean, we have a few people asking stuff about, again, general things, about like hard counters, but I want to reserve that for the TeamLiquid.net podcasts. So, people messaging me on other chat things, closing that as well. So, this is awesome. So, Locke says, Dear Day 9, yesterday you talked about timing with Phoenixes or Immortals around 32 food. Do you think Sentry hallucinations could play a part in bluffing build orders? I don't know. You know, I'm actually going to say no for now. I think that most good players are going to be aware of what you can and can't do and that sort of thing. for the most part, try not to be too obsessed with tricking the opponent and trying to be overly clever. Just try to do something that's solid and straight up and revolves around good unit composition and good timing. So, let's see here. So, TrexiBot says, Day 9, do you think choosing to expand to a high-yield mineral patch early may be a mistake, given that late-game Protoss has Void Rays, Warp Prisms, and Mothership Recall to harass with, and it's easier to hold the high mineral patch than several expansions? Let me try reading that one more time, because I feel like the question contradicted itself. It says, Day 9, do you think choosing to expand to a high-yield mineral patch early may be a mistake? I don't think that. I think that it's easier to hold the high mineral patch. This is how I would put it. The high mineral patches, the high-yield minerals, are good just because they're high-yield minerals, right? Whew, awesome. But in particular, the location of the expansion was the big reason that I liked it. By taking that expansion, it secured a lot of our back expansions a lot easier as the Terran. I like that a lot more. So I feel that even though the Protoss has like a whole bunch of other stuff to harass with in the later stages of the game, it would be easier to first take the high yield minerals, or actually this is a better way to put it. As Terran, you're going to take your half of the map anyways, so you're going to deal with Void Rays, Warp Prisms, Mothership Recall, no matter what, if you get to the late game stages. So, since that's inevitably going to happen in the end, the real question is, what's the safest way to get there? And the safest way, I think, is to take that high yield mineral patch first, so that way you can get the other expansions up a lot more easily. So I'm just going to take one more question because I think my throat is going to explode. So True Redemption 8 asks a question I really like. It says, Day 9, given the most recent discussions regarding the defensive advantage or lack thereof in StarCraft 2, what enabled the Terran to hold onto his defensive position so well in this game? Does the planetary fortress play that big of a role? What are your thoughts on the topic of StarCraft 2's defensive advantage? Let's actually go back to that stage in the game. Let's actually rewind it just a little bit. So Terran, around 15 minutes, hasn't taken the center yet. But what I think is being so helpful is that two things. First of all, the planetary fortress is a pretty damn big help, right? It's this huge giant cannon. But also the fact that we have the sensor tower here, and we have another sensor tower here. I mean, look at this. The Terran is seeing stuff way far in advance, right? The Terran is seeing it so early on, which means that if a push is coming from the left or the right, the Terran has the opportunity to position himself right back here. So that way, all the Protoss units are at a very small concave, and the Terran has a very big concave. I think the concaves are probably the biggest thing. And also some of the issues with making sure you have vision of everything all at once to be able to shoot up the high ground can potentially be a little bit of an issue. So I would say that the defender is, always going to have the advantage in any game, just in terms of the battle, but the aggressor has the opportunity to get more expansions up, to force the opponent down certain tech paths. So for StarCraft 2 on the whole, I think the Planetary Fortress is a pretty cool idea. It means you really have to commit hard to killing off Terran expansions, and though this might sound like an issue, I actually think it's kind of cool, because it means that, like we saw here, a Void Ray, or like air, can be really scary for an expansion. So Terran needs to bring a lot of his stuff around, and I think that one of the more successful points for Protoss in the game was when he did this big push at the late stages in the game. It looks like I went a little far forward. Yeah, here we go. Right here, when Protoss was able to pull off something like this. I don't necessarily know if the main was the best choice. Part of the issue is that Battlecruisers were already out, and because there were so many Battlecruisers up at this point in time, they just did so much damage. Because, I mean, look, there's even 3 or 4 is going to do a ton of damage to someone who's not prepared at all. Yeah, look, there's a 4th one coming up. I mean, look how much damage this Immortal's just getting eaten alive. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about it. The Defender and those sensor towers and all the planetary fortresses really gave Terran the edge there. So I think that that's what was really cool about that strategy. And also, again, the middle is such a narrow area that if you can take one of the center expansions and defend that bottom and top lane, you're going to be in great shape. So with that, I'm going to wrap up Day 9 Daily number 85, which means 15 episodes away from the epic episode 100, which will, of course, inevitably be coming. We have the matches actually going on live right now. There's the 2 Pro League matches are on. And if you go to teamliquid.net, they have all the stream links in the top right. So yeah, I'm going to the GDC tomorrow and actually all the way through Friday, and I hope I don't infect everybody there. Hey, so once again, thank you so much for watching, and take it easy, everyone. Cheers.